In this video, I want to show you an alternative solution to adding animations to your interactive documents. In this page, the page opens, and we see clouds that are traveling from left to right across the screen. This is a basic frame-based animation I created in Photoshop. Let me show you the steps you need to follow to create this. Let's first take a look at InDesign. You need to first determine the area you want your animation to be displayed in. I made a frame that is 1024 by 300 pixels. In Photoshop, I made the document the exact same size, so there will be no fitting problems when I import the animation. Next, I have the object I want to animate on its own layer in Photoshop. I've added the blue layer below so that you can see how the clouds actually look. I'll delete the blue layer since I want the clouds to just float in transparency. That way, I can place this animation over anything in InDesign. Next, I'll start by placing the clouds off stage to the left. To build an animation in CS6, you can use the Timeline panel. That panel is located under Window, Timeline. Choose Create Frame Animation in the center of the panel. This changes the Timeline panel from a timed animation to a frame-based animation. Now I can see the first frame of my animation. I'll change the time of my first frame to 0.1 seconds. Remember, in this first frame, the clouds are off stage to the left. Now I'll create a second frame by using the drop-down menu on the Timeline panel, and I'll choose New Frame. Now that I have a new frame, I'll drag the clouds to the opposite side of the stage using the Shift key so that they travel along the same x-axis. Now that I have the start and end points to this animation, Photoshop can do the rest of the work for me. I'll select both frames in the timeline and choose Tween from the Timeline drop-down menu. Tweening is an animation term that literally means the frames in between. I'll add 25 frames. Now if I click play, you can probably barely see it, but the clouds move from left to right. Tweening in Photoshop lets you tween three parameters: position, which we just saw; opacity, which means you can have something appear and then disappear based on the opacity of the layer. And you can also tween any effects, such as color or drop shadow, that are added as layer effects. You cannot tween size. That is to say that you cannot have an object on a layer and you make a new frame and transform it to make it bigger or smaller. All the instances will adjust to that frame size. Size animations would need to be made one frame at a time with all the objects on separate layers. Now that I made the animation, I need to make each frame of the animation a PNG. This really only takes two easy steps. The first one is to choose Flatten Frames to Layers in the Timeline drop-down menu. This makes every frame of the animation its own layer. In the Layers panel, I'll delete the bottommost layer because that was the cloud I used for the animation. Now all the remaining layers define the animation. Next, I'll use a handy script built into Photoshop. It's located under File, Scripts, Export Layers to Files. Choose the destination folder. You can also define the file prefix name. For the type, choose PNG24. Make sure transparency is checked and uncheck Trim Layers. Click OK when you're ready, and Photoshop will export each layer in its own PNG file. Now it's time to import that into our frame in InDesign. In InDesign, I'll select the frame and I'll pick the animated image enrichment. I'll click the plus sign to import all the separate files. I'll check infinite loop so that the animation will loop. I'll change the animation type to auto so that this animation automatically plays. For the frame rate, I'll lower this to 8 since I have 27 frames, which means it will take a little over 3 seconds for these clouds to pass over the screen. Now I can render the page in the Project Manager panel. Once rendered, you can now see how the clouds travel from left to right across the page, in an infinite loop. Thanks for watching.